Hello everyone, this is John Galt speaking, back with another tutorial video where we're going to talk about using the simple capture the flag template, which is available on the Unreal Engine 4 marketplace for a whopping $5.99. So let's go ahead and get the project built. So I'm going to type simple here and we're going to create the project, and I'm just going to do this in Unreal Engine 4.15. This is applicable regardless of the engine version, right? So it does support all the way to engine 4.24, but this is my engine version of preference. So we're going to go ahead and create the project here, and we'll open this up and we'll talk a little bit about how you can manipulate certain aspects of this template. Have to be kind of careful here because I don't want to give too much away so that you could potentially recreate this without actually having to purchase the template. Okay, so one of the first things that I would like to tell you guys is how you set this up to work for two people, right? When you're building a multiplayer game, you get to spend a lot of time in separate windows, making sure that things are replicating and displaying and functioning correctly across the server and all the clients. So I hit the drop down here beside the play button and go into advanced settings. And I changed the window width here to 720 by 512 height. And I uncheck always center windows. Always center window to screen, uncheck that. Then you set it to however many screens you want. I generally just do 2, sometimes 3. And then you play in new editor window Pi. And then you can position your screens around a little bit like so. And, one screen you host a game. And then the Alt tab. And then this screen you find the server. Do a search here, locate it, and then join it. And voila. Now we are connected. We're connected. So that's essentially how you can set this up, where you can test mechanics that you add and change and stuff like that. So this is simple capture the flag, right? So there's no combat or anything like that in it. It's meant as a demonstration of how you could set up a team-based respawn system with team-based random spawn points and capture the flag, right? So increasing the score and cycling the map and all that stuff. All right, so that's the essentials of what this is, and that's how you can test in multiple windows. So now you guys may notice that there is a another thing that you can do here. If you don't want to have to go through the menu every single time, just open the map, right? And now when you hit play, you don't have to go through the whole entire menu. You can just do it this way. Okay. All right. And so there's that. Now the timer, right? So a lot of the questions I get is about the manipulation of the timer. And really what map you start on and all that stuff. And guys, I'll just tell you, this is a bit complicated. So if you want to modify a lot of the defaults that are in this template pre-programmed, that is in the blueprints folder underneath the system folder in the game instance. If you open the game instance, there are max players, the map name, and the match timer. And so essentially you can change a lot of those defaults in the game instance right here. So if you want to, change the amounts and everything, you can modify a lot of that here. But there's a couple things that work together here. As an example, the menu system. So if we go back to the menu and we hit play here, when you get to the part where you host a game, you're going to notice that there's some stuff already in here, right? So these are what I have deemed as the defaults, right? So if you don't change any of this stuff when you host a game, it's going to start you on the test map 01. It's going to set your max players to 4, and the timer is going to be set to 15. And if you'll notice, back in the game instance, that is exactly what is in these defaults here, right? So it is 4 players, the name of the map, and the match timer. Now, if you choose to change these, you actually have to change these in a couple places. So that is in the widget itself, right? So if you go into the main menu widget, and you go into the, let's see, which one is it? It is the, is it the multiplayer menu? No. It's been a hot minute since I made all this stuff. Server admin, main menu, server settings menu. Here we go. So if you go into the server settings menu and you go into the graph, right here is where a lot of that stuff is being passed through. And so you can see that I'm using these combo boxes here. Well, these combo boxes is what changes these values, which then gets transferred into these variables, which are here. And that is what goes into the game instance. If we open the game instance, you can see that right before we host the game, that's where those values are being set at. Okay. And once again, the class defaults are essentially what's in this widget by default. So in other words, if none of these things are changed, this is exactly what's in here. And when you do change any of these things by using the combo box, it changes this value and it transfers that data into the game instance when you host the game, right? See, here's that custom event. So if you do want to modify this kind of stuff, it's a little bit of a process, right? So you have to go into the server settings and you have to manipulate your boxes, right? Because these output strings and the strings get changed into integers or names. So back in the designer, as an example, if we wanted to change the name of this map, we would actually have to select the combo box. You can change what's being displayed, right? So if you modify this value here, that will actually change what's being displayed here. And then you, under the default options here, there's also here, that's where that would have to be changed at, because that's where it's reading that value. And that's true for this too, right? So if you go into the max players, you can see that the option that's displayed is the selected option. And then you can change what's displayed in the drop down when you utilize the box. And then of course the same is true for the minutes. So if you want to change this stuff, you change it in the widget. Then after you get it changed in the widget, you go into the game instance. Over here where it's setting the server defaults, you update this. So if you want the default to start as 10 players, you would modify it in here to be 10, display 10, and then you would change these values here to list however many players you want. And then you change it in here to correspond with whatever your new defaults are going to be. And that's true for all of them, right? So if you want to change the name of the maps, you change all the information in here, then you change that information here. Now, the map travel also involves this. So if you go into the game instance, not the game instance, the game state, which is this blueprint, this is what initiates the map travel. Okay, so this is what's keeping track of the timer, what's being displayed in the timer, and it's also being what's tracking the scoring of the players, how many captures they have. And then, you know, if you meet the criteria, either the timer expires or the maximum amount of flag captures has been met, it triggers through and does all the rest of this logic. And this is where the map travel takes place, and you can see that that name is in here. So if I was to change test map 02 to a new name, my new map 02, it has to be modified in the widget. Then it has to be modified in the game instance in the defaults. Then you also have to come in here and modify how your map travel is working, right? So the way this map travel works is it looks at the map you're on, and if it's map 1, it cycles you to map 2. If it's map 2, it cycles you back to map 1. So naturally, if you guys change the names of these maps, it's going to have to look for your new map name, and if it's your new map name, you need to travel to the new map name, right? Now, you could probably put these in variables so they'd be easier to follow and find and stuff, but currently that's the way that is set up. Just keep that in mind if you want to change the names of the maps. It is a bit of a process, and I might do an update at some point to this template. Remember, it's only $5.99, so it's not meant to be game ready. It's meant to be a really good example of how you can set these things up and get them to work in multiplayer. So there's a lot of things that could be changed, optimized, and done a lot differently. Now, another thing in here that I want to point out is you really don't manipulate the timer in here. That's done in the other things, the host game menu and the game instance. But the only thing that you do modify in here currently is how many captures it takes to win a match, right? So there is a variable in here called score to win. And you can see that by default, I have that set to 5. So if you want to make it where you only have to get 1 capture, you would come into the game state and you would change this to 1. If you want it to be 10 captures, you change it to 10. Now, that could be incorporated into the menu system where you could define that, to be editable so that you could change it. But every capture the flag game that I've ever played, it's 5 captures to win, right? So that's something that's kind of hard coded in here. You can change it, but if you want to, or incorporate it into the menu, the game instance is where that happens at. So you would have to, in your widget, you would add a listing for being able to change the captures, and then you would have to follow the logic all the way through, right? So you would set a default in the game instance for that. If they don't change it, it could be 5, or they could manipulate it, and then of course it would update in the game instance when you host the game to reflect how many captures it takes to win. Okay, so there's that. Now, another thing that I want to talk about the maps in particular is that there's one map that actually has something in the level blueprint. So a lot of times you see guys put things in the level blueprints of maps, and really, that's really meant, you shouldn't be putting very much in there. But in this project here, I want to go ahead and open up the test map 1. And if you go to the blueprints and look in the level blueprint, there's nothing in here. And then if you look in map 2, there is nothing in here, right? So if we go into the level blueprint, there's nothing in here. However, there is one very important thing in one of these maps, which happens to be the main menu. So if we go to the level blueprint of the main menu, on event begin play, there's logic in here that calls a custom event in the game instance to display that main menu. All the rest of the level blueprints are clear, and I want to point this out mainly because it gets lost in translation sometimes. So when the main menu level loads, it runs this custom event, which is in the game instance, and all this is for is displaying the main menu. After that, the widgets take over, right? Like all the button presses do this, do that. But that one particular thing is actually in the level blueprint. So if you are trying to migrate this into a project, as an example, in the main menu of your new project, you need to make sure that you're putting this logic, this little bit of logic, in your main menu, your new main menu, if that's what you want to do. Okay? Okay. All right. So now we're going to talk about map manipulation, right? So we want to talk about how you create a map. So obviously in this video, hopefully I've already pointed out that changing the names of these maps that are included in here is quite difficult and complicated. So if you guys are wanting to start building a level on top of this, I would like to give you guys my suggestion. Since all these things are connected and tied together, it would be easier and quicker if you guys, of course you guys don't like this map, right? This is a crappy test map. And you would likely want to build structures and put foliage in and trees and hills and whales and snails and all that. So what my suggestion would be for you guys is to delete everything on this map and start from this map, even though it's still called MP Test Map 01. If you change that name, you're going to have to go track down and fix all the things that need to be changed in order to correspond with your new map name. So my suggestion would be that, well, you guys could just delete everything that's in here, because all that's in here essentially is a terrain, a basic terrain that is completely flat and has no materials on it. So in other words, you could click this Sculpt tool here and you could go ahead and start sculpting you out some terrain, putting materials on it and all that stuff. So let me undo all that. So you could just delete all this stuff, right? So literally you could come in here and just say, okay, we are going to delete all the team starts, the flag spawners, and delete it, right? Select it all and delete it. And then you could go down through here and say, okay, all these stupid text renderers, we don't need none of this stuff, right? So select them all and delete them. And then you could do the team. Oh, that's the little lobby area, right? So you could delete all the geometry and, you know, all that crap, to where essentially what you have is a flat map with terrain. Right now, you could delete the sky sphere, you could delete the skylight, the dominant directional light, the atmospheric fog. These are your light mass importance volume, light mass character volume. You can readjust all those, or you can delete them and add your own as you want. So essentially, that's what I would recommend doing. Like, start building your structures in here, migrate them in, copy paste them in, however it is that you guys choose to do it. So I'm going to go ahead and just hit save here. Let me actually build the lighting so that I can get rid of this crap on the ground. It's stupidly easy to set a map up once you, unless you go fiddling around with changing the names of things, and then that's when things go AWOL. You can do it, but as I described a moment ago, the process is not easy. It's not as easy as I would like for it to be, but it can be done. So if we hit play at this point here, here's something that's also very important. Your maps that you play on, like this is a playable map. Map 2 is also a playable map. So if you guys are trying to use your own map, it's important that you tell it to use the correct game mode, right? So in your map, you make sure you look in the game mode and it's set to use the default game mode that comes in this template. And that is got information in it that involves using the respawn system and all that stuff. So at this point here, if you hit play, that's what it's going to do. That's exactly what it's going to do, right? You're going to spawn in and just fall forever and ever and ever. And you'll get a warning, an error. So let's pretend like for a moment that we build our level, right? We build our corridors, our stairs, our structures. We got our foliage in, we got our landscapes sculpted, and now we're ready to actually start making it to play on. So as I described in the overview video, I have set this up to utilize a little lobby area. So the first thing that you'd want to do is designate where is your lobby area going to be, right? And I suggested in those videos, build you some sort of an underground bunker that you can't get in or out of except by using the menu, right? You could put something way up in the sky, like a spaceship above the map, the play area. Just make sure that the only way in or out of that lobby area is by using the menu. You don't want players from the red team or the blue team to be able to just go right in there. So once you figure that out, you go into the blueprints folder under gameplay and you bring in your team start, right? And you start positioning these wherever it is that you want them for the team that you want them to be for. So once you have a team start in the level, in the details panel, you can see that right here, you can change the team that it's for by simply selecting the drop down. So the lobby area is what we're going to set up first. So we're just going to take this team start and duplicate quite a few of these and just stick them in wherever that area is that you designate to be your little lobby area. Then you go to whichever side of the map that you want to be your red or blue map, and you bring in the same exact team start master. You can orient it whichever way you want to, and then you just designate the team. Okay, this is going to be the red side of the map. Scatter your random spawn points all over where you want your red team to be able to spawn at on that area. Whichever side you deem to be the red, then you go and say, okay, all the way over here, this is going to be the blue side of the map. Same exact team start master. Orient it however you choose. Like this. Make sure you designate it to be the blue team. And then same thing. You just start scattering your random spawn points out wherever you want those to be, however many of them you want there to be. And at this point here, you now have a playable map, right? So you can now, at this point, pick a team, and you're actually going to get a random spawn point of that team on the side where you designated it. And as you can see, I can pick this guy, put him on the blue team, and voila. And then also, at any point, they can then transfer off the team that they're on and go to the whatever little area you decided is going to be your little only way in and out is the menu area, the lobby area. And alternately, you can just join straight into the lobby, right, when you join in. Okay, so that's how you set the team starts up. It's literally that easy, right? Now, the next thing would be the flags, right? So you will notice that there's actually 2 flags that are in this gameplay folder. The only one that you put in the level is this one. Right? The spawner, the BP flag spawner master. And it is identical to the way that you set up your team starts, right? So you position the flag wherever you want it to be. And then in the class defaults of there, right? You go into select it in the level, go into the details, and then you can tell it what team it's for, right? So this case, this would be the blue team. Don't change flag is spawned, right? Leave that to be true. Otherwise, if it's false, there will be no flag there, right? So you want that to be there. And you can do that. And then, of course, you would want to put one on the red side of the map. Same spawner. You just bring it in. And then you change this one to be the red team. And then voila. You now have the ability to cap flags, right? And of course, you guys know how the flag caps work. You pick up the opposite team's flag and you run it over the base of the team that you're on, right? So you would pick this up and then you run it back this way. And then when you cap it, it will increase the team score. And then if you keep doing that till you get to 5, then it will trigger map travel. Map travel will only work in a standalone version or a packaged build. You can't map travel in the editor. It just don't work, right? And so that's it. Like, essentially, that's it. That's the guts of this project. And that is how you can operate it. Now, when and if you guys go to changing your character, which I'm sure that you will at some point, there's a couple things that I want to talk about when it comes to the character in this project. So, of course, this is using the default dummy. And then that means that it's using the default UB4 skeleton and physics asset. There is a socket on this character skeleton. So my general guideline for you guys is always this. You should use the same skeleton on all your characters. If you have a character, it should be compliant with the default dummy, meaning you don't have to maintain multiple skeleton assets, right? I've talked about this in a lot of videos, and maybe this needs a little bit more of an explanation, but let me just say this. If you guys are going to be trying to bring in a bunch of Mixamo characters and using their skeletons, you're going to have to do the retargeting stuff, or you're going to have to create this socket on all those characters, and it's just a nightmare, right? There's really no reason that your humanoid characters should not be using the same exact skeleton hierarchy that the default dummy uses. It makes using different characters easier. It makes using animations easier. It makes creating animation assets easier because you're all using the same skeleton hierarchy, right? But just be aware that there is a socket on this character called flag socket. So if you guys are trying to use a different skeleton, you're going to have to make sure that that is on the skeleton. You would put this flag on here as a preview asset, orient it correctly, and get it lined up correctly and all that stuff. And then, of course, in the character blueprint itself, you can see that there is a component added, a static mesh component added to the character that is parented to the mesh of the character that is also set to use that flag socket. And that is where the invisible flag that shows up on the back of the character is. So just keep in mind, if you guys are wanting to change and use completely different skeletons other than that, there is a pretty large process in the creation of how this system works in this template. So, you know, maybe in some video I can show you guys how to change the character or whatever, but you guys, if you make sure that your characters conform to the default dummy, you just simply import your character and tell it to use the skeleton asset that is already in this project, and you don't have to fool with any of this stuff. It's only when you go to changing a bunch of stuff that you have to put all this extra work into it. And that's not just my project, guys. That's the way this engine works. It's all reference based, right? So if you change to a new character blueprint, everything that's checking this character blueprint is going to have to be recreated in your new character blueprint. That's why you make one master character blueprint and you build in all the logic you want to be able to use that same blueprint, but change the meshes out, change the animation sets out, all using the same exact logic and stuff that's already in here. Okay, and another thing that I want to point out is that there are things in the construction script. So as an example, in this construction script, this is what I'm using to create a dynamic material instance for the color scheme in this project, right? So red team, they're red. Blue team, they're blue. The flag that's on the back, when you pick it up, it needs to display the color of the team that you got it from. So a lot of that is done in the construction script of the character. So the reason that I'm pointing this out is when you guys put in a new character, it's going to try to put this same dynamic material instance on the character, which means your character is not going to look right? He's going to look red. And you likely wouldn't want him to look red. You would want him to use the textures and materials that the character actually has. So be aware that that's where this is taking place. So when you guys change the character, you will likely want to come in here and disconnect all the parts of this that is actually changing the color of the character, but not the flag, right? You still want the flag to be displayed the correct color and whatnot, right? So you can see that I'm doing the flag material here and the body color. So in this case, you would want to unhook everything except what's changing the color of that flag on the character's back. Okay. And that's essentially it, guys. Also, there's a lot of things that Epic requires us to put in here that I really wouldn't do if it was me, but they require it, right? So it's kind of ridiculous to me that they require us to put these things in here, but then whenever people buy these templates, they have to come in here and undo a bunch of shit that Epic required us to put in here to begin with. So in other words, I really wouldn't have put in the color change of this character, right? Because I know people are going to be using their own character. They're not going to be using this dummy. But Epic required this to display the color of the team that the character's on. So that's something that I had to add. The same is also true, by the way, for the flags. Anything in here that changes color based on the team, it would be highly advisable for you guys to, well, shit, I don't want this changing color. Make sure you go look in the construction script, because that's where the majority of that color change and the applying of a dynamic material instance is taking place. So, when you guys put your own legitimate flag mesh in here and not this placeholder crap, it's going to try to change your color of your static mesh to this crappy color. So you have to come in here and kind of undo the stuff that's in the construction scripts, except for the parts that you want, right? So, and that's same true for the team start, right? So every single one of these, make sure you look in the construction script if you want to disable the color based on the team thing. Okay, and another thing too that I get a lot of questions about, which I'll go ahead and answer here. You're giving your spawn points away, stupid, right? This is another thing that Epic required, right? They want you to make it clearly obvious that this is a spawn point and this is for the team. And so the way that I chose to do that was by putting this little base mesh inside the team start, the custom team start that I created. So if you don't want that to show up, right? If you guys come into the team start and you look in the viewport, you can do a couple things here. Once again, make sure you look in the construction script, right? Because that is what's changing and applying that dynamic material instance to this base so that it will display the color based on the team that you set this spawn point to. So if you guys don't want these bases to show up, you can either just get rid of them, right? Delete them out of here and unhook all this stuff in the construction script. Or alternately, you can select the base and set it to, if you go to the rendering section here, you can set it to be hidden in game. So even though you can still see it from the editor, when you spawn in here, now you don't see those spawn points. And you can do the same kind of thing for the base of the flag and all that stuff. So you can make them invisible, but that's just something that Epic requires, right? They want that crap in there, and so it got put in there. And I think, guys, that's pretty much as much as I really want to cover. So, I could come in here and change the character out, but guys, I will just tell you right now, it's not hard if you follow what I mentioned here. Make all your characters conform to the default dummy. But if you guys are going to be using Paragon characters, Mixamo characters, Turbo Squid characters you bought off the marketplace that are not conforming to the default UE4 mannequin, there's a lot of work involved in that, and there just ain't no getting around it. And once again, there's no reason that your humanoid character could not use the same skeleton that's in the default dummy. Your character should be created to use that same skeleton hierarchy. They don't even have to be the same size, but the hierarchy of the skeleton needs to be the same. That way you can just have one single skeleton asset in your project, and you don't have to fool with all that retargeting, creating sockets, making sure the flag's attached to the socket, and making sure it's rotated right. Believe me, if you guys are not doing that, you're doing it wrong. I'll just tell you straight up, you're doing it wrong. I know you guys don't want to hear that, but you're doing it wrong. Even the professional game devs do it, right? They make their skeletons conform. It may not necessarily be the default UE4 skeleton, but they do conform, right? I guarantee you almost every single character in Fortnite is using the exact same skeleton hierarchy with a couple little tweaks here and there. But for the most part, that's how it's supposed to be done, guys. So don't be creating 13 different character skeletons, because then that means you're going to have 13 blend spaces, 13 animation blueprints, 13 character blueprints. It's just a nightmare. Don't do it. Okay, and so with that, guys, I mean, that's really all I can go into without giving away far too much of how this template works. And so I hope you guys understand how to use this template now and what it's for. Once again, my templates are meant for a couple things. One is tear this thing apart and see if you can figure out how it all works. Then you can recreate it in your project and not have to worry about changing all these things that I just mentioned in this video. That's one thing that you can do. Learn from it and use it to be able to recreate it in your game if you want capture the flag. Just use the same kind of deal that I did to get all these things to communicate and work together. Alternately, you can start building your game right on top of this template. That's why it does not contain a combat system. Because if I'd have put a combat system in here, you guys know I would have built a shooter game. Well, if someone wanted to capture the flag, but they wanted to do a car race and capture the flag, well, guess what they get to do? They get to go in there and tear out and gut all the shooter mechanics that I put in here. Same would have been true if they wanted some sort of a hack and slash capture the flag game. So this was intentionally kept simple, so that you can just build right on top of it and not have to undo an inordinate amount of stuff just to get it to function the way that you want it to. So there's that. Now there is a reason. One last thing that I forgot to mention here is the respawn timer. So that is actually in the character blueprint. So when this character dies, right? So when you suicide yourself, it starts a timer. It's not displayed anywhere, but it's counting down. And then after that timer countdown is over, it does the respawn. So if you want to extend or contract that timer, that is actually in the blueprint, the character blueprint. It's literally called respawn timer, and you can see that I have it set to 5 seconds. So if you want to manipulate and change that, right there's where you do it at. Other than that, that's it, guys. I mean, it's pretty simple how this all works and stuff. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and end the video here. So there'll be some more videos talking about the other products that I have, but I think this is pretty much a wrap for this one. The next one that I'll make will be in reference to the teams and class select template that I have for sale on the marketplace. It's meant to be simple, guys. I mean, that's why it's $5.99. It's not overly complex and complicated. I mean, trying to take, just to be perfectly frank here with you guys, trying to buy a pre-manufactured game in a template format and then trying to understand how all those things work and how they all talk together, and how to manipulate and change it and then convert it into a game and put it on Steam. That's not the way, guys. I'll just tell you straight up, that's not the way. Because you're likely never going to figure out how that template works. And if you can't figure out how the template works, well, then how are you ever going to get in there and manipulate it, modify it, and change it to the way you actually want it to work? Because I will just say, there is no template that is going to be what you envision your game to work like. Doesn't exist. So regardless of what kind of template you buy, you're going to be in there tearing it apart and trying to manipulate it and change it. And the more stuff it has, the more complex and convoluted it is, the more complex and complicated it is to try to figure out how it was made and manipulate. So most of the templates I make, I purposefully try to keep them as stupidly simple as possible. so that the people that buy these things can actually figure out how it was done and how it works. And then you can recreate it in your game based on what you learned from tearing the template apart. Or you can start building on top of what's already provided in these little simplistic templates. So with that, you guys take care of this, John Gall, and we will see you guys in another video in another time. Have a good one, fellows.